Greetings, YouTube. I've been watching the Fallout 3 playthrough that Gopher Videos, or Gopher, has done here on YouTube. It's been quite entertaining. We're up to like I'm up to like episode 24 or 25 or something like that out of 42. He's very entertaining, and the game is interesting. And before I go any further, realize that I've been playing post-apocalyptic games since Gamma World First Edition and Metamorphosis Alpha, the first one. So I've been doing them for as long as they existed in print. And I have played from weird and wacky up through gritty in the same campaign, depending on the appropriate adventure and the characters and the scenes. Heck, we've done adventures where it went from weird to wacky to gritty. But until I watched this playthrough, I never really noticed the absurdity that we tolerate in those types of games. Now, it's an older game. It's 4 years old, so it's not brand new. But the tone is the war happened yesterday. Mad Max. Escape from New York, that kind of vibe. And yet, enough time has passed for new religions to have evolved, new societies to have evolved, new animals and plants to have evolved. And yet, everything else in the world seems to be frozen in those few moments after the war. So you have people living in squalor, in shelters that would have been put together slapdashed for the first, 1 to 6 months before they had time to start building better ones. 160 years after the war. Why? Because that's the look gamers want. Gamers don't want the look of a world 160 years after the war. Do you know what's 160 years after a post-apocalyptic setting? Star Trek! Because remember, Star Trek is a post-apocalyptic setting. Most people forget that. But the world suffered a nuclear war. And 160 years later, we had warp drives. And they were out exploring the universe, and almost nothing took place on Earth. For good reason, because the rest of the galaxy was a whole lot more interesting. But in Fallout 3, it's 160 years after the war, and yet it looks like yesterday. There are broken tricycles lying in the street. All the rooms have paper lying on the floor. No one has patched a roof, ever, and yet the buildings still mysteriously stand. I read something recently. It said, do you want to destroy a barn? Cut an 18 by 18 inch hole in the roof, and then just stand back. Yes, houses can last 160 years. Even wooden houses can last 160 years if they are continually occupied and repaired. Did you walk away, and 30 years later that house is going to collapse inside into its own foundation, into its own basement if it's got one. And there's all kinds of power in Fallout 3. Even if there were functioning fusion reactors, there still isn't going to be the grid to keep that power flowing. Now, it is a slightly different world than ours. Up to 1945, Fallout 3 is us. But from 1945 on, it isn't. 1945 on, it's very much comic book technology. Things exist because the writers want them to exist. So in 2077, there's powered armor, and there's genetically engineered warriors, super soldiers, and there's powered armor, and there's the Cold War essentially still going on with just a few different players, resource wars, that kind of thing. And yet, computers look like they're straight out of the movie War Games. Green text on the screen. Because that's the retro look they want, which is fine. But there's no consistency. Nature will roar back once man is not there anymore. Within a couple of years, you're not going to be able to see that some of the parking lots will already be covered. Within 30 years, flowers will have fractured and moved concrete slabs and completely changed the world. Look at Chernobyl. nature just roared back in there. And yeah, I know the world's supposed to be a wasteland in Fallout 3, but if it was that much of a wasteland, if the war really reduced the entire planet, every single square foot of ground to a wasteland, then all life would die, because there would not be enough to provide the oxygen cycle any longer. So you have to realize that even a full-blown nuclear war, where as many missiles as you could possibly conceivably have landed, they are not going to wipe out all of nature. There's going to be huge sections of America that are going to be untouched by missiles. Yes, fallout might get there, but the explosions themselves wouldn't. And the fallout will be more diffused the further you get away. There are going to be sections in the United States and Canada that nothing touches. Nothing. They will not be affected by anything other than the fact that society has collapsed. But those villages and small towns will be the seeds that repopulate the world. And the population is still almost non-existent 160 years after the war in Fallout 3. There's a reason I'm calling this particular video the Preposterous-Apocalypse. It just makes no sense. Now, it's cool to look at. It's fun, weird, wacky, with a little bit of grit in there for fun, particularly if you crank up the gore factor. But it doesn't make any sense. And I've never really noticed it before until I'm sitting there watching it on the screen with all of the visuals that for the before now had always been inside my head in the heads of my players. But it's just bizarre. And I've had more consistency than this. Even when I reduced the population well below the point where it would have been by throwing in, genetically engineered diseases and chemical weapons on top of the nuclear devices, you still don't get enough people dead to have created this. Remember, if it was 99% effective, the war, even and that's impossible. If it was that effective, that's still what? 700 million people? No, 70 million people. 70 million people is a lot of people, folks. That's 30. I mean, that's huge. Actually, it's more than that. Oh, it's 70 million. Like 3 million in the United States. Yeah, 3 million right today. Around 3 million people. Well, that's a lot of people. 160 years from now, 3 million people, we're going to be back to 250,000 human beings. 200 million people. Easy. But the game doesn't do that because that's not what the players want. The players of the game want all the good things. They want all that stuff wrapped up into a big bundle and presented to them, even though it makes 0 sense. And I can respect that. But it's just so blazingly obvious at the moment because I'm watching this. Not to mention the gun porn is really amusing. Really, even though I love weapons, man. But they've got weapons in this game that are museum pieces in 2013. And yet somehow they're just lying in the street or in somebody's locker or in some raider's body. They had a little Lewis machine gun in this game. A Lewis machine gun. Which was used in World War I. Cracked me up when I saw that. They got Sten guns from World War II in there. Alongside people using powered armor and mini nukes, which look like little tiny fat boys. And the bomb it's in Megaton is a fat boy, just sitting in the middle of the city. And people live around this thing. And the radiation levels seem to have never gone down. Look at Nagasaki and Hiroshima, folks. Those radiation levels dropped over time. Something called, a half-life kicked in. But not in Fallout 3. In Fallout 3, everything that they want is frozen in time, and everything that they don't want frozen in time isn't. And it makes me smile and it makes me laugh. And I'm enjoying Gopher's playthrough. So if you enjoy Gopher's videos, or you enjoy Fallout 3, I recommend going seeing him. He plays with a lot of mods. If you like mods in Fallout 3, he's definitely the guy to go see. He writes them himself, and he reviews others that people do. But it's a wacky game, man, and it just showed to me, it illustrated to me in a way nothing else ever has, just the absolute craziness of Metamorphosis Alpha or Gamma World, up at least through the 1992 edition. The alternate edition didn't have so much of that, and the D20 edition was just a bloody mess. I had such hope. I still have hope out there for the Warlords of the Apocalypse for Pathfinder. I'm still championing its cause. I still hope that they actually publish that game. That would be very cool. So tell me, can you just ignore all of that? Is it just, just pull out the hand wavium and it doesn't bother you? Or does that kind of thing get under your skin like it does me? I know I'm overly pedantic. It's one of my little personality traits. So tell me in the comments, what do you like? How much silliness can you handle in a game before it breaks your immersion completely?